So, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Mark McCaffrey. I'm a co-focal point with ECOS. And today we are pleased to have Laura Weiland and Isatis Cintron, who will be presenting about the Learn4Climate campaign, which just soft launched on Monday. And they will give you more details of this exciting project. And I'm sure we'll have some time at the end for questions and comments. So Laura and Isatis, it's all yours.
Wonderful, thank you, Mark. And Isatis, let me know if you're ready to share your screen, and if not, I will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen
now. So my name is Laura Weiland, and I was the director of a education center, sustainable living education center up in upstate New York for the past 10 years. I was working at the Omega Institute, and am now working in ECOS and in sort of a sabbatical period. And I've been working a lot to support logistics as we're building capacity within ECOS and to support the coordination in the network. Isatis, maybe if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can start talking about the campaign.
Hi, everyone. I should be sharing my screen now. But my name is Isatis Cintron, and I have been working on public participation through like different organizations in Puerto Rico, which is where I come from, and I'm from Citizens Climate Lobby, and I'm happy to be here with you. I have been engaged with ECOS for about a year now, and I have been working both in like the steering committee and serving as the co-regional liaison for the Latin American region. I'm a PhD student, so I am a climate scientist, and work with like in the interconnection between like climate science and science communication.
Wonderful. So this campaign is something that you know, we've been talking about for several months with different partners, and it sort of has evolved and developed over the course of the last period of weeks, and we had this opportunity because when the June momentum was announced with the UNFCCC, we really wanted to align it with the opening of that, so the opening session for ACE. So we brought together a bunch of partners. If you want to go to the next slide, we can just look at sort of where the focus of the campaign is. And you know, we're really wanting this idea of inspiring governments to take people-centered climate action, and especially wanting to advocate for a really strong and transformational work plan as the UNFCCC process is heading towards the Doha work program ending and a new plan being laid out. So that's one part of it, but through the course of this presentation, what we really wanted to bring to you was sort of broad strokes of what we were thinking Learn4Climate, both the hashtag and what the wider campaign approach could be. So I don't know, Isatis, if you want to say anything else before we move on.
Sure. We have seen that ACE is normally taught in silos, so just a specific niche of people are talking about ACE and how to move like different areas. But what we would want to see with this call on governments and parties as non-party stakeholders is that we want a cross-cutting integration of ACE throughout the convention. So I think like this, the Raising the Ambition needs to include that and like cross-cutting integration into all climate action items.
Great. So we can move to the next slide. And with this, you know, we assume that most people on this call are probably pretty familiar with what Action for Climate Empowerment is, but just in case, we thought we would just add this slide in there in terms of the fact that, you know, when we're talking about ACE, what that really stands for in terms of this is the 6 elements that in 1992 were laid out in Article 6 of the original convention, but then also now we're focused on climate education, public participation, access to information, training, public awareness, and the collaboration that happens across the network globally. So that's really, when we're talking about ACE, those are sometimes in the campaign, we're talking about the actual program of ACE. But if we're talking about what's happening outside of the UN, we could be talking about actually strengthening the framework, but we're also talking about just the work on the ground of all of these things. So we'll be talking about both. So I mentioned that we, and this really is a credit to ECOS in terms of the quick turnaround. Is when we found out about the date of the ACE opening session coming up in the June momentum that was on June 8th. We decided that it would be really good to be able to pull together what we had been starting to work on with this campaign and actually have a soft launch to go in alignment with the timing of that session. And so what we did is we got together, and luckily, we've been talking to actually more organizations than you see here, but there were 20 organizations that we were able to coordinate enough with to get this launched together, which is wonderful because what it means is that we've got the website page, we've got, we have enough started that that we're really well set out now to actually bring more people into it and really, continue to grow and develop the initiative. So I just wanted to mention this, and then I'll turn it back over to ECOS to take us into more depth. So we've identified 3 main areas that that this campaign could really work on, and so we've already started to develop a lot in terms of what this might mean in terms of raising the profile and prioritization and just awareness in general to ACE. And again, that could mean both the, just climate education and public participation in general and those other elements, but it also means raising awareness within the UN system of ACE. And then advocating for that transformative framework, that we really want that to be incredibly strong as we head into the next period of time, because that gives us, something to work with even in our own countries to have that shared global framework that's really strong. And then also ECOS is also going to go into more detail around some of the things we've already thought about in terms of research and development of metrics for ACE implementation and monitoring. So ECOS, if you want to take us through a little bit more about what we've been working on and thinking about in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the main objective, that as I was talking before, the ACE is normally a niche, and even people that within the UNFCCC and outside in the governments have shown us that they don't know what ACE is. And the problem that we have is that these actions are somewhat fragmented through the nation's strategies and actions. So even people that have to do the NDCs are not branding ACE under the umbrella that will give the power, right? Because we need all 6 areas to make sure that the climate action is at the level that we need, because we need citizens participating that are fully informed and fully engaged, so that we can emerge with like those climate solutions that are just and fair. So what we will be doing with objective number 1 is trying to engage with more partners and different actors within and outside the UNFCCC into raising the profile and prioritizing using ACE as, as a conglomerate of actions, not as education here and public participation. It's like, how do we make all this work together? So what we want is to facilitate that knowledge sharing through collaborative and active coordination of global shared ACE strategy. So that means like ACE work program, but also how can we bring all of these other focuses areas together, and that is like, we're talking about government, we're talking about parties, negotiators, educators, and general public, schools, communities, and everyone, how we can come together and we can scale up and, like those local actions that have been driving much of the public awareness, education, and public engagement within like the different nations. So for this, we're thinking to develop some toolkits or share resources. And for that, we need everyone's help. So what this campaign aims to be is the platform or the nest for all those initiatives that are working under ACE. So we want to be able to have a place that everyone can go into gathering all this data. But more about that information sharing and resources, we want to help create, and we want to strengthen our capacity moving forward. So we want to build that coalition, and for what we want, as we were calling in the campaign, is that cross-cutting integration of ACE is what actually we believe that will empower or accelerate the transformative action that we need. So in that, in building those policy guidelines and recommendations, what we want to is advocate as a coalition for what a transformative and effective ACE work program is, in coordination with other climate action processes. So that means, and we will see it eventually aligning with other, like the global stock day, the NDC enhancement, etc. So for the research mapping and indicators, we've seen here our network is very engaged and very talented in research. So what we want to do is gather all that knowledge that we have, and some things that ACE is lacking is the tracking and monitoring. So we want to develop indicators, because sometimes how the ACE dialogues or the ACE initiatives go is that they elevate very individual actions or individual workshop, etc., that are tackling a specific group. And what we are interested is what makes a systemic change. So we want to collaboratively come together into the guidelines and those indicators, kind of talking about a scorecard for ACE. So in order to do this, what we're proposing is to do some roundtables with the partners that we have and the partners that will come. And all this will be building into what we hope will be is an ACE implementation observatory. So we want to track how countries are developing the ACE national strategy. How are they doing into supporting and capacity building their or do capacity building for the ACE stakeholders, which means the national focal point, but also the networks that he or she must be supported in to be able to do the level of work that ACE asked for, that mandate that needs collaborative action. So we want to develop and grow our collective capacity to influence and support the implementation of ACE. And in working together, as we will see in the timeline, we are going to be building on other strategies, because what is really important about this and that nesting of ACE is that we want to create a critical timeline of what action should look like. So in looking forward, right, we're talking about an action for climate empowerment work program that lasts a decade. So what do we have? We already know that ACE was established in 1992, and still today we are struggling into making this, even if it was recognized, the power and the potential has not been unlocked to its fullest. So we have that the Doha Work Program just ended, and we are seeing, we're entering the final revision of the Doha Work Program to propose for the parties to propose what the next work program should look like. And that adoption, the adoption of that work program would happen in COP26. So from here to COP26, we have an opportunity to influence that process. And then from COP26 forward, we have two stock takes and two NDC revisions that we want that ACE forms part of. Like at the moment, there's like this member processes, and we want that they all talk to each other. So when we're talking about stock take, we want them to be talking, it's like, how did you did in ACE? And like when we're talking about NDC revision, that enhancement of action includes like education, training, public participation, and access to information, the international collaboration, and the public awareness, like all together. How are you using these tools and areas to enforce everything that you do? And then, like, of course, we have Agenda 2030 that is talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and everything. So we want at the end, like, you know, like our ideal would be that all of these processes are intertwined. So quickly, I have been talking about this, but on phase one, we were developing the campaign, we soft launched it, and we are so happy and thankful for everyone that is here and supported, and everyone that's here because they want to learn more and join us in our next steps. So from now to, you know, September, October, we will be developing what those roundtables should look like together with our partners, and you know, having the roundtables, so that when we come to like October, we have some policy recommendations, guidelines, and indicators that we can show up to the table. Because in October, there's like the intercessions that would happen. Supposedly, we'll see, like, if Corona lets us, in Bonn. So we'll see how that happens, because there's a lot of communication or uncertainty about like the participation of civil society. So, but what we really want is, regardless of that, is have something to show up to the table. And along those lines, we will also be having our NDC We Won campaign that is dovetailing with this, and additionally amplifying the UNFCCC ACE guidelines into how to include ACE in NDC. So I'm not sure if at this moment Laura has something that she wants to jump in.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention is just that it will be in an upcoming community call, I think on the 24th, Mark, if I'm correct, but Climate Outreach is actually going to be the host of the first roundtable on public awareness. And so there'll be much more information about that coming.
Great, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we wanted, one of the things that we wanted to showcase is how we are collaborating into making these roundtables with our partners. So once we get to SB 52, or in that broader ballpark that is the end of this year, we'll be entering the second phase. So we will be talking about formal launch and having those indicators with us, right? Like, so that's what we want at that level, and probably start talking about the observatory, that implementation observatory, start to collect the information with the guidelines for that observatory. So in moving forward, since everything is so uncertain at the moment with how things are moving, we don't have specific milestone, but also what we want is that we all build together that critical time frame that we need to work in. What are the events? What are the initiatives that you are all taking part of, that we can support and that we can include in this campaign? Because we don't want this to be, you know, because everyone, we consider all of you part of ECOS. So we want to make sure that we are communicating the different aspects and initiative that people are taking under ACE. So that's what we want to map out from here to COP26. And of course, we know that we have some things that we need to keep an eye on, that is like the enhancements of the NDC that is supposed to be by the end of this year. But of course, like some countries will be postponing, especially because of resources and capacity to focus on this. But we need to still be asking for enhancement of action. So those are some of the milestones that we need to take into consideration and be paying attention. But what we want for phase 3 is actually to talk to all of you and see how can we build this coalition, and how can this coalition move forward? What are the next steps in, you know, like in unison, that we all move as a big drumbeat for COP26. So yeah, I talk a little bit about you know, like the upcoming months. It's like the roundtables, and then leading up to a formal campaign launch that we want to, you know, build a critical mass to show up in full force around September or October, in collaboration with you, with all of you. Because we really believe that we have a role to play, and that there is momentum for change, and we want to take advantage of all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isatis. And I maybe just give one more example of like how this could also cross-pollinate with a whole bunch of different efforts. Like, for example, the Youth for Climate campaign that's going to get launched, relaunched in later this month. That would be, those are the kinds of things that as we continue to map out, you know, what people are doing, we can continue to ask people to post Learn4Climate at the same time, and also ask everybody to, you know, to help out with different campaigns that are all connected, and see if we can continue to uplift all of it as we go. And so we're just really interested in hearing your thoughts and questions, and like Isati said, you know, there's the more of us that can show up together as we're heading towards COP26. We know, we're hearing from the Secretariat that you know, they're looking for the ways that momentum can be continued or built between now and then, especially because it's pushed back a year. So that's part of this, is really looking at, you know, is there a way for us to show like how important this is, and have people really feel that, because there are already so many of us that are working in these areas, but it may not be seen, and so we want it to be seen.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for the overview of this campaign, which obviously is just getting started, and hopefully will build momentum over the coming months and years to come, because this is one of those timeless concepts. We can all learn about climate and share what we learn with others.